Would Labour like to apologise?
I think we're all incredibly sorry about what has happened, and I think it's right that we're seeing reports that the Prime Minister is going to come to Parliament and on the back of what we'll read will respond, and the expectation is that he will apologise. I mean, as you said, this is 50 years in the making, this scandal. It's absolutely appalling. I had a woman come to me a couple of weeks ago who has got hepatitis C, who struggled for years before it was even diagnosed, before she knew what the problem was. Every single person who's affected, that's a human with a story, with a family, with a community, and we clearly failed across decades to firstly stop it, to understand it, to be honest about it, and then to talk about compensation and putting it right. And, you know,
The previous Labour government was not without guilt.
I think this is absolutely right. It's clear that there are huge lessons to learn here. Now, we'll find out what those lessons are today, and we'll find out what was said and what wasn't said, and how we got to this point. But this has happened over multiple governments. So, of course, Labour and Conservative alike, former ministers will be reading this, will be looking at it. But it's our job as today's politicians to say, what are we going to do to compensate those affected, those infected, and to make sure this never happens again. And Keir Starmer at the weekend wrote an article where he said the NHS is not some kind of shrine that we need to worship at. It's a service that we all rely on. So we have to make sure it works. We have to learn those lessons. And clearly, I think this is a huge moment and such a tribute to all of those campaigners. Diana Johnson, the MP, the Labour MP who's been campaigning for this for years. I spoke to her last night. You know, everybody's exhausted, all these campaigners, after decades of trying to get justice. So let's hope today is that watershed moment where we can start to rebuild.
The then, or at the time, Health Secretary Andy Burnham, under a Labour government, he made it his business to campaign for people who were impacted by the infected blood scandal. He thinks that criminal prosecution should be forthcoming. Do you agree?
But I think we need to wait and see what comes out of the report. I can't preempt that. Now, obviously, he was a health secretary at the time, and he has his story in terms of what was told to him and what wasn't told to him. And I think the more detail about that will come out in the report. But it's clear that there was cover-up, there were mistakes, the whole gamut of errors seem to have been made over a long period of time, so we need to make sure we learn the lessons.
Yeah, your present Shadow Health Secretary forgot all the pledges yesterday. Have you got them off pat now?
I have. Do you want me to?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I shall mark your homework.
So economic security is the absolute bedrock of everything a Labour government will do. We want to cut waiting lists. Of course we do. 40,000 extra appointments or surgeries every day, which is very important. We're going to set up the Border Security Command to make sure we take control of our borders and tackle the problem with the small boats. We're going to tackle antisocial behaviour.
That's the one he forgot.
Which is the one he forgot, which is incredibly important to everybody in their communities where we've seen the lack of policing be a real problem. Of course, we need to set up Great British Energy, which is going to bring our bills down, and 6,500 teachers for our schools.
OK, there you go. Go
I think we've all learned from me there, but for the grace of God go I, of that, yes.
And what are the timeframes for those?
Well, we're going to start them from day one. Obviously, this is a decade of national renewal. We've had a decade of economic decline, so there is a big job to be done. But there are things we can do from day one. There'll be the first 100 days programme. There'll be the first King's Speech that will have lots of legislation to implement some of these things. And, of course, we're realistic about the state of the economy and what we can do. But we will move at pace, we will bring stability, and we will bring a plan. And I think most people, including the taxi driver I got this morning, say it's time for change.
He would say that, wouldn't he? You'll do all of those in the first term?
So those are our, those are the first term plans. The missions that sit behind those, so if you look at something like crime, where we're saying we want to halve violence against women and girls or halve knife crime, these things will take time, but we want to bed in the policies, the first steps that we're talking about in the first term, so that we can get that growth and get our public services back on track. But we're not naive at the challenge that we have in terms of turning the country around.
I put it to the Minister this morning that Rishi Sunak and his wife earned an extra £250,000 a day last year. They're on the rich list. They are richer than the King. But the Minister quite rightly made the point that the Prime Minister still does everything he can for every area of the United Kingdom, and he talked about the furlough scheme during the pandemic, etc. What can you do to try to fix the economy?
Well, we start with financial stability. I'm the Shadow Minister for Industry, and every single organisation, business, industry I talk to says we need that stability. So Rachel Reeves's iron grip on our public finances and all the measures we're bringing in to try and stop a Liz Truss-style crash in the future. The second thing is we need to get Britain moving and building, so 1.5 million homes is really key to that. And in my area, the National Wealth Fund that is going to deliver 650,000 good jobs across the country that we want to see. That is no small task. That is a big mission, but we have to do that alongside, of course, our changes to workers' rights, so that when the economy grows, it's everybody who benefits.
What do you do with an extra £250,000 a day?
Gosh, I can't.
Straight down Oxford Street.
I can't even imagine. But we don't begrudge him having his wealth. That's fine. I think the question is, what kind of Prime Minister is he, and how is he running the country, and does he understand the realities that most people are facing? And I think the answer is no on that front, and that's why.
Well, we'll see come the election, won't we? We'll see. For now, it's good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.